In the pristine, manicured suburb of Cypress Ridge, silence wasn't golden, it was enforced. The neighborhood was a place where lawns were measured, fences matched exactly 4 feet, and paint colors were selected from an HOA-approved palette. It was paradise, provided you followed the rules. And if you didn't, Karen Templeton would make sure you regretted it. Karen was the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, though her actual title was president. With a clipboard in hand and binoculars never far from reach, she prowled the streets like a mall cop with a vendetta. Her mission? Absolute conformity. Her favorite pastime? Making life miserable for those who didn't bow to the rulebook. Jake Reynolds moved into Cypress Ridge with his daughter Lily and her golden retriever mix, Max, 6 months ago. A decorated sheriff's deputy with 12 years on the force, Jake wanted a quieter life after losing his wife to cancer. He chose Cypress Ridge for its safety and good schools. What he didn't know was that beneath its tranquil surface, the HOA operated more like a dictatorship. Karen was its iron-fisted queen. For Lily, Max was more than a pet. The gentle dog had become her lifeline. After her mother's passing, Lily stopped talking to other children, stopped smiling. She cried at night until Jake brought Max home from a rescue shelter, a golden-eyed companion, who sat with her through storms and dreams alike. Max was soon registered as her emotional support animal, a status legally protected under federal law, but laws meant little to Karen if they interfered with her sense of control. One morning, as the sun painted golden streaks over the rows of identical rooftops, Lily sat cross-legged on the porch, brushing Max's fur with a pink comb. The quiet moment between girl and dog was interrupted by the unmistakable staccato of high heels on concrete. Karen stood at the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, lips pursed. "I've warned you already," she said, her voice slicing through the morning air. "That animal exceeds the community's weight limit for dogs. No exceptions." Lily hugged Max tighter, but said nothing. She knew who this woman was. Her father had warned her about the HOA lady who didn't like them much. "He's not just a dog," Lily finally whispered. "He's my best friend," Karen scoffed. "He's a violation." Jake stepped out the front door, still wearing his undershirt and tactical pants from the early shift. He moved calmly down the steps, his eyes locked on Karen. "We've discussed this," he said, holding out a folder. "Here's the ADA documentation. Max is an emotional support animal, registered and certified. Federal law supersedes your HOA guidelines." Karen didn't take the folder. Instead, she smirked and pulled her phone from her bag. "We'll see how long that holds up. Rules are rules, Officer Reynolds, even for you." Jake didn't flinch. "And the law is the law, even for you." Karen turned and marched away, tapping furiously on her screen. That evening, Jake found a violation notice taped to his front door. "Unauthorized pet, final warning." It was Karen's handwriting. 2 days later, she sent an email blast to the entire neighborhood. "Greater than residents of Cypress Ridge, please be aware that an unapproved, oversized dog has been repeatedly spotted in our community. Regardless of sob stories or flimsy paperwork, we cannot allow our standards to be undermined. Safety and order come first. HOA President Karen Templeton." The message landed like a bombshell. Some neighbors rolled their eyes. Others whispered about Karen going too far, but none dared confront her. Jake, meanwhile, knew it was more than a petty crusade. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was using the HOA as a weapon to punish what she couldn't control: his independence, his uniform, and most of all, his daughter's freedom to just be a kid. The central conflict had been lit like a fuse, and Karen, obsessed with power, didn't realize she'd just declared war on the wrong man. What she did next would take things from harassment to crisis. Saturday arrived with blue skies and birdsong, an illusion of peace over Cypress Ridge. Jake was scheduled for a short midday shift at the sheriff's office. Something routine before spending the rest of the weekend with Lily. He kissed her forehead, ruffled Max's ears, and promised ice cream after he got back. "Be good, buddy," he said to Max. "Always is," Lily grinned. Across the street, behind beige curtains and judgmental eyes, Karen Templeton watched it all unfold with simmering disgust. For weeks, her attempts to intimidate the Reynolds family had failed. The more she pushed, the more polite Jake became, a silent refusal to stoop to her level. That infuriated her. The truth was, Karen hated things she couldn't control, and the sight of that cheerful girl playing in the yard with her illegal mutt, while the rest of the neighborhood tiptoed around her rules, it chipped away at her ego like a pickaxe to glass. She had tried warnings, then official notices. She even filed a grievance with the HOA board, but they'd only offered lukewarm support, unwilling to challenge Jake directly. That left one option: a dramatic display of authority. At 3:41 p.m., she dialed 911. Her voice dripped with false urgency. "Yes, I'd like to report a potentially dangerous situation. There's a large, unauthorized dog roaming off leash near a child. The owner has left the scene. It's not safe." The dispatcher asked for clarification. Karen exaggerated. "The dog's aggressive. It's big. The child's unsupervised." She clicked her phone off and smiled. If Jake wouldn't move the dog, maybe law enforcement would. 12 minutes later, 2 black and white patrol cars rolled slowly into Cypress Ridge. Sirens off, lights flashing. Lily, sitting barefoot in the grass beside Max, looked up in confusion. She saw the uniforms, then the tall blonde woman standing confidently at the curb. Max barked once and sat, protective but calm. Officers Carter and Dunn exited the vehicles cautiously. "Afternoon, young lady," said Carter, stepping forward with practiced calm. "We received a call about a loose dog." "He's not loose," Lily said, petting Max's head. "He's my best friend." Karen strutted across the lawn as if she were in charge of the entire subdivision. "That's the dog, right there. The HOA has strict policies: 30-pound weight limit, leash-only access, no exceptions without board approval." Carter turned. "And you are?" "Karen Templeton, HOA president." He nodded but didn't write it down. Max remained still, tail thumping gently. Dunn knelt to check his collar, friendly looks, well behaved. "Any complaints of biting or aggression?" Karen huffed. "Not yet. But do you want to wait until something happens? That animal is unsanctioned." "Do you live here, sweetheart?" Carter asked Lily gently. She nodded. "With my dad. He's at work. But Max isn't dangerous. He's my emotional support dog." "We have papers." Karen scoffed. "Those aren't legal in this neighborhood." Officer Carter's jaw tensed. "That's not how the law works, ma'am." Still, procedure required escalation. Carter radioed dispatch for supervisory review. "We may need to contact animal control to verify documentation." Child is calm. Dog is calm. No threat visible. Karen's smile returned. "Good. Let's get this handled the proper way." But before anything more could happen, a third vehicle turned onto the street, one Karen didn't recognize at first. A sheriff's department SUV, civilian black. No lights. No siren, just presence. It rolled up slowly, purposefully. The driver's door opened, and Jake Reynolds stepped out in full uniform. Tan shirt, badge shining, utility belt strapped tight. Karen's expression crumbled into disbelief. "Dad." Lily jumped up, eyes wide with relief. Jake nodded at the officers before kneeling beside Max, who nuzzled his hand. "Report," Jake asked crisply, eyes now locked on Carter. "Received a 911 call. Alleged unrestrained aggressive dog near a child. Caller claimed potential danger. On arrival, no signs of threat. Dog is calm. Child is supervised, though alone momentarily." Jake turned to Karen. His voice remained low, controlled, icy. "You called emergency services on my daughter's registered emotional support animal." Karen's confidence faltered. "You can't respond to your own call." Jake stood up straight. "You misused 911 to enforce a that's a criminal offense." Her jaw clenched. "You're biased. This is personal." "No," Jake cut in. "You made it personal when you scared my daughter and wasted the department's time." Karen took a step back, suddenly realizing she was no longer the authority figure in this yard. Jake looked at Carter. "Take down her statement. I'll handle the official complaint at the station." Karen's mouth opened to argue, but no words came out, and for the first time in weeks, the Reynolds lawn was peaceful, not because the HOA enforced it, but because justice had finally arrived. Karen Templeton had always believed in power through paper rules, fines, citations. Her whole life was wrapped in checklists and control. But after that afternoon standoff, something shifted in Cypress Ridge. For the first time in years, the queen of the cul-de-sac had lost control, and the whole neighborhood felt it. The next morning, Jake filed a formal report against Karen for filing a false emergency call. Officer Dunn backed his statement. The incident was logged at the sheriff's department, and a record of it was requested by the HOAS Oversight Committee, especially after multiple neighbors reached out to the board asking, "Has she gone too far?" The conflict wasn't over though. Karen wasn't the type to surrender. 2 days later, a printed notice appeared on Jake's front door in bold red ink. Greater than final action notice. You are in breach of HOA Policy 7C, unapproved pet registration. In yard presence, your continued failure to remove the oversized dog violates our standards. If not resolved within 48 hours, you will be subject to daily fines, legal escalation, and possible lien proceedings. Jake held the notice in his hand, jaw tightening. His eyes scanned the signature. Karen Templeton, HOA President. Below it, in small print, were legal references twisted just enough to sound official, but not enough to be lawful. He walked back into the house and calmly placed the letter into a folder already brimming with HOA documents. Then he picked up his phone and called his attorney. Across town, in a gray-paneled conference room, a different sort of meeting was underway. The Cypress Ridge HOA board had called an emergency session without Karen's knowledge. 3 out of 5 members had grown wary of her overreach. The 911 stunt had triggered whispers. And now, with complaints from residents and media exposure looming, their hands were forced. "She's made this personal," said Reena Patel, the treasurer, reviewing the violation reports Karen had sent, "and she's dragging the whole board with her." "She falsified a danger report to 911, added Malcolm Green, a quiet but firm board member. "That's criminal exposure. If Jake decides to sue, we're on the hook." "But she is the president," muttered the secretary, unsure. "Not if we vote to suspend her," Reena said. "Our bylaws allow it for misconduct pending review. If we don't act, the fallout is on us." Back at home, Jake spent the afternoon photocopying every piece of correspondence he'd received from the HOA. He printed Max's certification, Lily's pediatric notes, and a formal ADA explanation of support animals and housing zones. Each page went into a thick binder he labeled, "Defense File, Reynolds v. HOA. Dad." Lily peeked in from the hallway. "Are we in trouble?" Jake knelt in front of her. "Not even close, sweetheart, but what if they take Max?" "They won't," he promised. "Karen broke the rules, not us. And when people break rules, the truth catches up to them." That night, a knock echoed through Karen Templeton's front door. When she opened it, she found 2 members of the HOA board waiting. "We need to talk," Reena said. Her tone was clipped, professional. Karen tried to smile. "Of course. Is this about that ridiculous sheriff overreaction?" Malcolm stepped forward. "Actually, it's about you." Inside her pristine living room, they sat her down and presented a printed statement of suspension, pending investigation into the misuse of emergency services, harassment of a resident under ADA protection, and misuse of HOA authority. "You are temporarily relieved of all board duties effective immediately." Karen's face turned ghostly pale. "You're suspending me? On hearsay?" "On pattern," Reena said, flipping through a folder. "Jake Reynolds isn't the only one you've targeted. We've reviewed 7 questionable citations this quarter alone, 4 of which contradict our own charter." Karen stood. "This is outrageous. I built this neighborhood, I keep it clean, organized. Without me, this place falls apart." "No," Malcolm said quietly. "Without you, this place might finally breathe." As they left her home, Karen stood frozen in the center of her living room, the silence around her louder than it had ever been. Meanwhile, Jake received a notice of Karen's suspension the next morning, hand-delivered by a different board member. Attached was a personal note. "Greater than Mr. Reynolds, we apologize for the undue stress your family has faced. The board is undergoing internal review and policy training. Your documentation was received and will be filed appropriately. Please know that Max is welcome here." The HOA board. Jake folded the letter slowly, almost in disbelief. The war wasn't completely over, but the tide had turned. Spring melted into summer, and with it, the tension that had once gripped Cypress Ridge began to thaw. Gone were the passive-aggressive emails, the surprise compliance checks, the daily fear of HOA ambushes in driveways, and at the center of that change was one man, his daughter, and a dog named Max. Jake Reynolds didn't ask for a war, but once it was declared, he made sure it ended right. After Karen Templeton's suspension, the HOA board launched a full-scale audit of past citations. Residents, many of whom had once feared Karen, now came forward with stories of intimidation, false fines, and manipulated violations. The floodgates were open. Karen, still clinging to her shredded authority, attempted to retaliate, emailing threats, warning neighbors they were destroying standards, calling the board's decision mob rule. But her efforts fell flat. Her credibility, once ironclad, now cracked and scattered like a shattered porcelain plate. Eventually, she was removed permanently. Jake, meanwhile, wasn't done. He submitted a formal complaint through the sheriff's office for misuse of emergency services, a class, a misdemeanor in their county. The investigation was serious, but Jake made it clear he didn't want revenge. He wanted precedent. "I'm not pressing charges," he told the county attorney. "I just want her to understand that the law isn't hers to weaponize." The attorney agreed. Karen was issued a formal warning, fined for false reporting, and ordered to attend a mandatory civic training course, focused on ADA compliance, emergency services protocol, and ethical HOA conduct. It was poetic in a way. The woman who thought she was the law, now forced to sit and learn what it actually meant. But justice came with more than just rules. It came with rebuilding. A month after Karen's removal, the new interim HOA board invited Jake to speak at a community town hall. The goal was to reset the tone of Cypress Ridge and foster trust where fear had taken root. Jake arrived in plain clothes. No badge, no uniform. Just a father with a daughter and a dog sitting by his side, standing at the front of the room. He didn't preach, he didn't scold. He simply told the story. He described how Max had changed Lily's life, how rules should protect, not punish, how power unchecked turns community into control, and how standing up not just for his family, but for the truth meant that others no longer had to feel small in their own homes. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then came applause, hesitant at first, then rolling like a wave. After the meeting, neighbors approached with gratitude, some with apologies, others with tearful stories of their own frustrations under Karen's rule. For the first time since moving in, Jake felt truly welcomed. Lily, shy at first, ran around the playground outside with 3 other kids her age. Max trotted behind her, tongue lolling, tail swishing like a flag in the wind, and Jake just watched. The neighborhood had changed, not perfectly, but meaningfully. Weeks later, the HOA adopted new regulations that ensured federal law took clear precedence over community bylaws. A new appeals process was introduced. Oversight committees were implemented to prevent single-handed rule enforcement. What was once a fortress of control was slowly becoming what it was always meant to be, a neighborhood. As for Karen, she moved out quietly 3 months later. Her for sale sign was yanked from the lawn by a hired moving crew. No neighbors came to say goodbye. She left behind trimmed hedges, countless fines, and a legacy of fear no one wanted to revive. Her house was eventually bought by a retired couple with 2 rescued dogs. When Jake and Lily passed by on their evening walk, Max barked happily at the gate. The new owners waved. "Looks like Max has made more friends," Jake said with a smile. Lily nodded. "No rules about that, right? None that matter anymore." Jake paused, looking out over Cypress Ridge. The setting sun bathed the street in amber. Porch lights flickered on. For the first time, the neighborhood didn't feel like a trap, it felt like home. He squeezed Lily's hand gently. "You know," he said, "I don't mind the rules. I just mind the people who forget what they're for." Lily grinned. "And now they remember. Thanks to you," Jake replied, smiling. "And Max." The dog barked in approval, tail wagging as if in salute. And with that, they walked on father-daughter and their 4-legged defender into a neighborhood no longer defined by fear, but by something far rarer, peace.